Welcome to Honestly Rated, and today we'll be talking about your favorite Phoenix, Sunburn. Sunburn comes from Sprou's Adventure and is a character that never got another version, not even an Eon's Elite. And in my head, that means one of two things. Either he's so good that they never needed to change anything about him, or he just wasn't that great and they physically couldn't think of anything to do with him. And so, today I'm going to see if one or two is the correct option. And we're going to be doing that by taking a look at his overall moves and design to really see if Sunburn was honestly ever any good. But before we jump into the actual gameplay, let me give you Sunburn's lore. His is actually pretty simple. He's a Phoenix Dragon, and he's kind of born with these powers. And a lot of evil things like things with powers. So they would try to steal Sunburn, Sunburn would defend himself, and rinse and repeat. But this cycle would never really end, and luckily Eon, the nice charitable guy that he is, decided that he was going to make him a Skylander. So for one, he would be protected more, and for two, he was able to legally kill things. And that's basically how Sunburn became a Skylander. Last thing I need to say is that if you want to see some more Honestly Rated in the future, subscribing would help me out the most, but these do come out every single Saturday, and you guys just being here and watching and commenting always just means the most to me. And also, if you want to see some more, there's a big playlist in the description that I wouldn't mind you guys clicking on either. And if you want to leave down your Skylander suggestions in the comments, I also wouldn't stop you from doing that too, because I like seeing them. So, yeah, thank you. And let's go see how much of a burn Sunburn can really make. Starting us off, we're going to have Flamethrower Breath and Immoltation Teleport. I won't lie to you, Sunburn feels very weird. He has a very clunky style of gameplay that I just don't really like, and hopefully it gets fixed while we keep going. But let me explain it to you. His Flamethrower, or his Flame Breath, whatever you want to call it, is pretty cool, design-wise, but it just isn't that great. 25 damage at the speed that it gives you isn't enough to really melt enemies away, and also it has a really slow turning effect. It's just actively not an infinite item that you can keep spewing out of your mouth. It eventually stops, which is kind of weird, because I thought Phoenix were supposed to have a burning fire always. I thought that was the whole deal. So it stopping just doesn't really make sense. It's just not that great of a primary fire, especially the thing that you're mainly going to be hitting enemies with. It sometimes pushes enemies back a little bit, sometimes it doesn't. Overall, it also doesn't even hit multiple enemies in a general area, which you would think, because again, it's Flame Breath, Flamethrower, actively in my head, I would think it would do that. But it just doesn't do it. Sometimes it does, but I usually think I get lucky in those points. It's just not actively something that happens. It's just not that great. It's just not that great. Then we also have his teleportation, which actually is alright if you use it the right way. If you use it the normal way, it is very slow. You'll teleport to somewhere, he'll do a little animation, and you can't move. The main way of using this, though, is just to use a jump cancel. You just teleport, jump away, and you can immediately move. And without it, it just feels super clunky. But with it, which I normally do, it feels a lot better. So, overall, just not that great. Everything just feels a little clunky. It's just not super. I don't feel as cool as I think a Phoenix Dragon should feel. Next up is the Guided Teleportation and Blaze Thrower. For these starting upgrades, these are honestly some really nice ones. Guided Teleportation allows us to pick where we want to teleport, which isn't completely free will, right? I can't pick anywhere, but they give us 4 points to pick off of, and you just make a decision. It's honestly really nice. It allows you to delay your teleportation, allow the enemy to do their move with it, and then you can teleport behind them, in front of them, beside them, wherever you really want to go. And honestly, it kind of fixes up that whole clunkiness with it that I had before, because I was forced to be in front of them or behind them, somewhere where I maybe didn't want to be if I accidentally press the button or enemies align differently. But this, I can wait and see what the enemies are going to do, and then actively just kind of protract it and go wherever I really need to go. It's honestly just a really nice move. Then we also have a damage upgrade for our Flame Breath, and honestly this one, I think it just needed a little bit more. I don't know why it was only 4 hit points, but just a little bit, in the 30s, I think would have sufficed. But they didn't. They made it 29, and I really don't like upgrades that really minutely upgrade damage a bit. I like it when there's a big jump. So I think if it just went to 30, even 31, I would have been better off than 29, because I still don't think it really kills things that quickly, but it's better than nothing. Last on the primary, we have Phoenix Dash and Immolation Inflammation. With those final upgrades, we finally got our third move, and honestly, it's called the Phoenix Dash. That sounds pretty cool. It must be pretty good. Sadly, it really isn't. Listen, maybe it was good back in Sprou's Adventure, was the first game and only game in the series, but now with modern technology and being able to use our feet to propel us upwards, jumping just kind of blows this whole thing over the water. Its main use is that it can go through enemies, and it does 11 damage. The 11 damage isn't its main core thing. The main core thing is that you can go through enemies, and when you couldn't jump, yeah, this probably was good, even in Giants. But now since we can jump and just juking enemies is easier than ever, it just doesn't really have that much of a use. You can use it to kill chompies, I guess, since the flamethrower takes so long to turn, and maybe you can also use it as like a getaway tool of sorts, where you use it to just kind of run, because it is faster than you walking. So I guess that's also another plus, and a personal plus is that at least it's not the wings, you know, like those other Sprouts Adventure characters with wings. I fucking hate when they make them fly, but overall, it's just not that great of a move. It's just a pretty meh one that was just kind of its time, you know? It was an era of its time. Then we also got a damage upgrade for our teleportation, and honestly, that's pretty nice. It went from 17 to 25, which is a way better jump than our flamethrower did, so I'll take that. And again, I think teleportation is probably Sunburn's best move so far, so giving it a damage upgrade doesn't hurt at all for me. It does hurt the enemies, though. But now we go into the paths where hopefully things can just be a little bit better. Onto the Blaze Dragon path, where we have Infinite Flame and Intense Heat. The core of this path is to upgrade our Flamethrower, and it does well at it. It allows us to first throw infinite heat, so we can just constantly keep shooting our Flamethrower, which is something I asked for in the beginning. Then the second one allows us to do more damage if you hold down that button, completely rewarding you for using the first ability. Design-wise, this is pretty cool. Sadly, Sunburn himself, for the design of the Flamethrower, doesn't make this work too well. Sunburn himself isn't a character that really wants to get hit, so standing there and just constantly taking damage from enemies doesn't really work. So actively trying to avoid getting damage is the most optimal play when using your Flamethrower. The problem lies, though, is that Flamethrower actively doesn't let you turn that well, so dodging things is practically impractical. And then also jumping, you know, gets rid of it. If you get hit by a move that pushes you back, your Flamethrower stops. There's a lot of things that go for Sunburn that just completely stop him from reaching that peak. Personally, I think the damage upgrade should have actually just been a damage upgrade, even though I'm a person that doesn't really see upgrades like those. Because I think the design of it's well, but how Sunburn was made to use his Flamethrower and how it's slow and, again, very clunky feeling, it just doesn't do the damage upgrade justice and doesn't really feel like it's there sometimes. Especially, again, when there's bigger clumps of enemies, because when are you going to actively sit there and be able to do that much damage in that short amount of time? Usually, never. Last up we have is the Phoenix Grand Blaze. This allows you to hold down the button even for longer for your Flamethrower, and you yourself will become the fire. And now doing even more damage, 37 from the 33, and you yourself actually doing damage. It sounds pretty cool, and honestly, it kind of is. But in the same vein that I talked about the last one, Sunburn as a character doesn't actively allow you to use this ability that often. I honestly think that an upgrade that should have been here was maybe making the Flamethrower longer. I think that could have fixed him to be a lot further of a sniper where holding down the button doesn't feel as risky, because he's very much right now a mid-round kind of shooter. He doesn't have like a super far range, but he doesn't have a very close range. So he's just in that weird middle ground that just makes the Flamethrower feel clunky. Now, again, this one isn't too bad. If you can get to that spot, I guess it could be good. But the damage output against you is just not that great, and Sunburn won't live to see another day probably. For the bottom path, we have Flame Lord with Immolation, Destruction, and Flame Streaks. Now, these starting two, honestly, are actually pretty great. Teleportation, I believe, is to be Sunburn's best move, and honestly, these just make them even better. The initial blow-up of you going into teleportation is now bigger, does more damage, which is, again, always nice to a move like that. And again, it went up to 34 from 25. That is how you do a damage upgrade. Then we also have just a fire line that follows through, even with the ones you don't teleport with. This just adds for extra damage to enemies that you actively aren't going to, especially with bigger groups. This is the one thing that you use to try to kill enemies in big groups, which you would think, hey, use your Flamethrower, but again, it just doesn't really work like that sometimes, so this is your to-go. And since usually with your Flamethrower, you're kind of rushing in since you're not going to be turning for that long to get away, you can use this to just kind of go away and then kind of rinse and repeat the cycle. It makes it a lot better. It's just a lot better of a damage output than the top one, and it's pretty good. Last up on this path is going to be the Burning Trail. It allows us to do more damage with the fire streaks that I just mentioned before. And now from 11, they do 19. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. I like extra damage. You know, that's like the one thing that sucks about Spyro Adventure characters and doing them. They're very fast to do, just because a lot of their upgrades are just damage upgrades. And overall, that kind of sucks. But I have to give him a little bit of leeway. You know, that was the first game that was ever made, so it's not bad, and I like the path. But really wish to see an upgrade for the Phoenix Dash, but I guess we still have the Soul Gem, so maybe my prayers could be answered there. And my prayers do get answered with the Flight of the Phoenix. This upgrades the Phoenix Dash to actually be something useful and actively make Sunburn a better character? Whoa! What this does is allows us to, one, have a longer Phoenix Dash, which is something no one fucking asked for, but instead it also does give us a fucking knockback move. It allows for a big explosion to happen at the end that launches enemies backwards. And this is something that I guess Sunburn should have probably had a long time ago. He actively makes use of this in a lot of ways. He, for one, can set up those fire fucking flamethrower attacks to actually do that maximum damage from the top path. Remember, you had to hold down. And if you have enemies coming at you, it's kind of hard to hold it down for a long time. But if you have enemies on the ground that actively aren't trying to hit you, you can do it. And then for teleportation, you know, you can also do that too without having to worry about any enemies hitting you. This is just a really great move. This is actually a beautifully fucking made move that actively makes Sunburn not like crazy good. This isn't fucking like fix him and overall makes him like the best character ever, but instead actively gives him a lot more choices to do comparatively to before. And honestly, I gotta give her props for that. And with that, that was Sunburn. Not much to really speak about, but that's because it's a Spyro's Adventure character. A lot of their upgrades are kind of similar, not really much to speak about. But overall, he was a character indeed. And my honest rating for Sunburn is going to have to be around a 2.5 out of 5. The reason why I give him this is for a lot of, not really design, but just execution of his moves. Flamethrower is just something like, again, turning is just super clunky feeling. Teleport, it feels pretty good most of the time. Sometimes there's a little bit of clunk in there. His fucking dash isn't that good until you get the Soul Gem, which is like something I want to give it props to and be like, it's good now, but like at the same time, its main function is still not that great. Its dash, it's still not good. And the top path, that design-wise, I actually did like. I think all of it could have worked, but again, Flamethrower just kind of makes it shit for it. And the Soul Gem kind of fixed it a little bit, but overall, it's just a character that really feels like you have to put a lot of work into, but at the end of it all, you just don't get as much back as some other characters can give it to you. But with that, that has been Sunburn Honestly Rated. Thank you guys for watching all the way through. It does mean a lot to me. Let me know what you think about Sunburn below. Let me know what Skylanders you want to see next. And if you want to see some more videos of mine, you can click on that playlist or just go to my channel. I have some other videos that are not Skylander related if you care. And if you want to stay up to date with these, remember, they come out every single Saturday, but subscribing would help me out the most. So, you know, thank you in advance. And with that, I hope to see you and everybody else for the next one. Peace.